In a noisy world, silence has become rare, but silence is where true power is born. Many people are busy trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be accepted, yet they feel tired, restless, and unsure of themselves. Because real strength does not come from constant reaction. Real strength comes from inner control. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the person who masters silence masters the mind, and the one who masters the mind masters life. When you stop reacting to everything, when you stop depending on everyone, when your peace no longer depends on the outside world, you begin to discover a calm strength within you, a strength that is not loud but unshakable, a presence that is not forceful but powerful, a mind that is not restless but unstoppable. These 7 lessons will help you become silent, strong, and truly unstoppable. 1. Silence protects your energy. Not everything deserves your response, and not every situation deserves your emotional investment. Many people feel mentally exhausted not because their life is extremely difficult, but because their mind is constantly reacting to everything happening around them. Every opinion, every comment, every small misunderstanding becomes a reason to think more, worry more, and explain more. Slowly, without realizing it, their inner peace becomes weaker because their attention is scattered everywhere. A person who reacts to everything gives their power away piece by piece. They feel the need to defend themselves even when it is not necessary. They try to prove their worth to people who have already decided not to understand them. They attempt to correct every misunderstanding, respond to every criticism, and satisfy every expectation. But the more they try to control how others see them, the more they lose control over how they feel inside. Buddhism teaches that silence is not a sign of weakness. Silence is a sign of awareness. Silence shows that you are strong enough to choose peace over unnecessary conflict. When you remain silent in situations that do not truly matter, you protect your mental clarity, you protect your emotional balance, you protect your inner stability. Many conflicts grow larger simply because someone feels the need to respond immediately. A small disagreement becomes a long argument. A simple misunderstanding becomes emotional distance. A careless comment becomes a heavy burden in the mind. But when you learn to pause, observe, and choose silence, many problems lose their power before they even begin. Silence gives you time to understand the situation more clearly. It allows emotions to settle before words are spoken. It helps you avoid reactions that later create regret. When the mind becomes calm, your responses become wiser and more meaningful. Instead of reacting impulsively, you begin responding with clarity and intention. There is great strength in the ability to observe without immediately reacting. When you observe silently, you begin to notice things that are often hidden behind emotional reactions. You notice people's intentions more clearly. You notice patterns in behavior. You notice which situations truly matter and which situations only disturb your peace without adding value to your life. A peaceful person understands that attention is a form of energy. Where attention goes, energy flows. If your attention is constantly focused on negativity, criticism, and unnecessary drama, your energy becomes weak. But when your attention is protected and used carefully, your energy becomes stable and powerful. Silence also protects your dignity. When you do not react to every opinion, you show that your self-worth does not depend on external validation. When you do not argue with every misunderstanding, you show that your peace is more valuable than winning small battles. When you do not explain yourself to those who are not willing to listen, you show respect for your own emotional well-being. It is important to understand that silence does not mean suppression of feelings. Silence means conscious choice. It means you are aware of what deserves your reaction and what does not. It means you choose meaningful responses instead of emotional reactions. It means you give importance to your inner stability more than temporary satisfaction of proving a point. Many people waste their mental energy trying to control things that are outside their control. They try to control how others think, how others speak, and how others behave. But Buddhism reminds us that true peace comes when we learn to control our own mind instead of trying to control everything around us. When you stop reacting to everything, your mind becomes lighter. You feel less pressure to explain yourself constantly. You feel less need to impress everyone. You feel less disturbed by opinions that do not truly define your life. This creates emotional freedom. Silence allows you to step back and see the bigger picture. Many situations that seem important in the moment lose their importance with time. Many arguments that seem necessary later feel unnecessary. Many reactions that feel urgent later feel regretful. Silence gives you the wisdom to recognize what truly deserves your energy. Your energy is limited each day. Where you invest it determines the quality of your life. If your energy is spent on negativity, overthinking, and unnecessary conflicts, you will feel drained. But if your energy is protected and used for growth, learning, and meaningful actions, your life begins to feel more peaceful and purposeful. A wise person does not try to win every argument. A wise person tries to protect their peace. They understand that not every situation needs a reaction, not every comment needs a reply, not every misunderstanding needs an explanation. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. When silence becomes your habit, emotional stability becomes your strength. When emotional stability becomes your strength, your mind becomes clear. And when your mind becomes clear, your decisions become powerful. Silence does not make you weak. Silence makes you aware. Silence protects your energy, and protected energy creates inner power. 2. Calmness is real strength. Many people believe that strength is shown through loud reactions, strong words, and powerful expressions of emotion. Society often teaches that if you remain calm, people may think you are weak, passive, or unable to defend yourself. But Buddhist wisdom presents a very different understanding of strength. True strength is not about how strongly you react. True strength is about how well you control your reactions. Anyone can raise their voice when they feel angry. Anyone can lose patience when situations become difficult. Anyone can allow emotions to take control of their behavior. But the person who remains calm, even when faced with pressure, shows a deeper kind of power. This power does not come from dominance over others, but from mastery over oneself. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. Calmness is the ability to experience emotions without becoming controlled by them. Emotions are natural. Anger, sadness, frustration, and disappointment are part of human life. Buddhism does not teach us to ignore these emotions. Instead, it teaches us to observe them without letting them decide our actions. When the mind becomes overwhelmed with emotion, clarity disappears. Decisions made in moments of anger often create regret later. Words spoken in frustration often damage relationships. Reactions driven by fear often create unnecessary suffering. But when the mind remains calm, you gain the ability to see situations more clearly and respond more wisely. A calm mind allows you to pause before acting. This pause creates space between feeling and reaction. In that space, awareness grows. You begin to notice that not every situation requires immediate action. Some situations require patience, some require understanding, some require silence. Calmness gives you the ability to choose your response instead of becoming controlled by impulse. Buddhism often compares the mind to water. When water is disturbed, it becomes unclear. You cannot see what lies beneath the surface. But when water becomes still, it becomes transparent and reflective. In the same way, when the mind is restless, thoughts become confused and decisions become impulsive. But when the mind becomes still, understanding becomes clear. Calmness creates stability. When you are stable inside, external situations lose the power to disturb you easily. People may criticize you, misunderstand you, or disagree with you, but their actions do not immediately shake your emotional balance. This stability gives you the ability to remain centered, even when the world around you feels uncertain. Many people react strongly because they feel the need to protect their ego. They feel that if they do not respond immediately, they will lose respect. But true respect is not gained through emotional reactions. True respect is earned through consistency, clarity, and composure. A calm person shows confidence without needing to prove anything through aggression. Calmness also helps you understand others more deeply. When you are calm, you listen better. When you listen better, you understand more. Often, conflicts grow not because of real problems, but because of misunderstandings. When both sides react emotionally, communication becomes difficult. But when one person remains calm, the situation often becomes easier to resolve. A calm presence has a quiet influence on others. When someone speaks with patience and clarity, people naturally feel more comfortable. Calmness reduces tension. Calmness creates trust. Calmness invites cooperation instead of resistance. This is why calm individuals often become natural leaders, even if they never try to dominate others. Remaining calm during difficult moments requires practice. It requires awareness of your thoughts and understanding of your emotional patterns. It requires patience with yourself as you learn to respond differently than before. Calmness is not developed in one day. It is developed slowly, through repeated effort and self-observation. Every challenging situation becomes an opportunity to practice calmness. When you feel anger rising, you observe it without immediately expressing it. When you feel frustration building, you allow yourself time before responding. When you feel pressure, you remind yourself that clarity comes from patience, not from panic. Calmness strengthens decision-making ability. When the mind is peaceful, you are able to evaluate situations with greater understanding. You consider long-term consequences instead of short-term satisfaction. You choose responses that align with your values instead of reactions that only satisfy temporary emotions. Buddhism teaches that the mind can become either a source of suffering or a source of peace. When emotions control the mind, suffering increases. But when awareness guides the mind, peace becomes possible. Calmness allows awareness to remain present even in challenging moments. It is important to understand that calmness does not mean accepting everything without boundaries. A calm person can still express disagreement. A calm person can still stand for what is right. The difference is that calmness allows expression without hostility and action without aggression. Calmness allows strength without losing balance. People who develop calmness become less affected by external negativity. They do not absorb every criticism as a personal attack. They do not interpret every disagreement as rejection. They do not allow temporary problems to create permanent stress. Instead, they respond thoughtfully and move forward with clarity. Calmness also protects physical and mental health. Constant emotional tension creates stress in the body and confusion in the mind. Over time, this stress weakens concentration, reduces patience, and affects overall well-being. But a calm mind supports better focus, healthier relationships, and more stable emotional experiences. Inner peace is not created by controlling the outside world. Inner peace is created by understanding the inside world. When you understand your emotions, you stop fearing them. When you stop fearing emotions, you stop reacting impulsively. And when impulsive reactions decrease, peace becomes more natural. Calmness allows you to move through life with quiet confidence. You no longer feel the need to defend every opinion or respond to every challenge immediately. You trust your ability to handle situations thoughtfully. This trust builds self-respect and emotional independence. True strength is not measured by how loudly you react, but by how peacefully you remain when situations become intense. True strength is not about controlling others, but about understanding yourself. True strength is not about forcing outcomes, but about maintaining stability regardless of outcomes. When calmness becomes part of your personality, your presence itself becomes reassuring. People feel safe sharing ideas with you. People feel comfortable communicating with you. People recognize your stability even without you speaking about it. Calmness is not passive. Calmness is powerful. Calmness is the foundation of wise action. Calmness allows you to move carefully, think clearly, and live meaningfully. A calm mind sees opportunities where others see problems. A calm mind finds solutions where others create conflict. A calm mind builds stability where others experience chaos. When calmness becomes your habit, strength becomes natural. And when strength becomes natural, your life becomes more balanced, more focused, and more peaceful. 3. Stop seeking validation from others. One of the deepest causes of emotional suffering is the constant need for approval. Many people do not realize how much of their happiness depends on how others see them. They feel confident when appreciated, but they feel insecure when ignored. They feel motivated when praised, but they feel discouraged when criticized. Their peace rises and falls based on the reactions of other people. Buddhism teaches that when your sense of worth depends on external opinions, your mind becomes unstable. The problem is not that people have opinions. The problem is when those opinions begin to control how you feel about yourself. When approval becomes necessary for confidence, rejection becomes painful. When praise becomes the source of happiness, criticism becomes the source of suffering. Many people live their lives trying to meet expectations that never truly end. They adjust their personality to be accepted. They hide their true thoughts to avoid disagreement. They say yes when they want to say no. They agree even when they feel uncomfortable. Slowly, they lose connection with their authentic self because they are constantly trying to become what others want them to be. Seeking validation creates emotional dependence. When you depend on approval, your mind is always waiting for confirmation from outside. You wait for someone to recognize your effort. You wait for someone to appreciate your value. You wait for someone to confirm that you are good enough. This waiting creates inner pressure because your peace becomes controlled by something you cannot fully control. Buddhism reminds us that everything outside of us is constantly changing. People's opinions change based on their moods, experiences, and perspectives. Someone may appreciate you today and misunderstand you tomorrow. Someone may agree with you in one situation and disagree with you in another. If your self-worth depends on these changing opinions, your emotional state will always feel uncertain. True confidence grows when you begin to trust your own understanding instead of constantly searching for reassurance. Self-trust does not mean believing you are always perfect. Self-trust means accepting that your intentions, efforts, and values matter even when others do not immediately recognize them. It means understanding that your worth does not increase when someone praises you, and it does not decrease when someone criticizes you. Many people fear judgment because they believe that being misunderstood reduces their value. But Buddhism teaches that misunderstanding is part of human life. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, some people will still see you according to their own beliefs. Trying to control every perception is exhausting. Trying to satisfy every expectation is impossible. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to act according to your values instead of acting according to approval. Your decisions become clearer because they are guided by awareness instead of fear of judgment. You speak honestly without constantly worrying about pleasing everyone. You express yourself naturally, without constantly adjusting your identity. Validation often feels comforting, but depending on it, weakens inner stability. The mind becomes attached to praise and fearful of criticism. This creates hesitation in action. People begin to avoid opportunities because they fear negative judgment. They avoid expressing ideas because they fear disagreement. They avoid growth because growth sometimes requires facing uncertainty. Buddhist wisdom encourages observing this attachment to approval without judging yourself for it. It is natural to want acceptance. It is natural to appreciate encouragement, but peace becomes possible when acceptance becomes a preference instead of a necessity. You can appreciate praise without depending on it. You can learn from criticism without feeling defined by it. Self-worth becomes stable when it is based on internal awareness instead of external reaction. When you know your intentions are sincere, you do not feel the need to constantly explain yourself. When you know your efforts are honest, you do not feel the need to constantly prove yourself. When you know your values are meaningful, you do not feel the need to constantly defend yourself. Another difficulty created by seeking validation is comparison. When approval becomes important, comparison becomes constant. People begin measuring themselves according to others' achievements, appearances, or recognition. Comparison creates dissatisfaction because someone will always seem more successful in some way. This creates a feeling of never being enough. Buddhism teaches that comparison distracts the mind from its own path. Each person experiences life through different conditions, challenges, and opportunities. Measuring your journey against someone else's journey creates confusion. Inner growth becomes slower when attention is focused on competing instead of understanding. When validation is no longer the main goal, actions become more meaningful. Effort becomes sincere because it is guided by understanding instead of the desire for praise. Learning becomes deeper because curiosity replaces the need to impress. Relationships become more honest because communication is not shaped by fear of rejection. People who stop seeking validation often feel lighter emotionally. They do not feel pressure to maintain a perfect image. They do not feel anxious about constant approval. They allow themselves to learn, make mistakes, and improve without feeling that every mistake reduces their value. This does not mean ignoring feedback completely. Wisdom includes listening carefully and learning continuously. The difference is that feedback becomes information instead of identity. Criticism becomes an opportunity for understanding instead of a reason for self-doubt. Praise becomes encouragement instead of the foundation of confidence. Emotional independence grows when you recognize that your worth exists regardless of external recognition. Your effort matters even if it is not immediately noticed. Your sincerity matters even if it is not immediately appreciated. Your growth matters even if it is not immediately visible to others. Buddhism teaches that peace develops when attachment to approval decreases. Attachment creates fear of losing approval. Fear creates hesitation and tension, but when attachment decreases, freedom increases. You act with more clarity because you are not constantly calculating how others will respond. Relationships also improve when validation is not constantly required. Conversations become more natural because communication is honest. Expectations become healthier because approval is not demanded. Mutual understanding grows because interaction is not based on constant need for reassurance. When you stop seeking validation, your focus returns to self-awareness. You begin observing your thoughts more carefully. You begin understanding your motivations more clearly. You begin improving your actions more intentionally. Growth becomes personal instead of performative. The mind becomes quieter when it is not constantly waiting for approval. Inner dialogue becomes more supportive instead of self-critical. You begin encouraging yourself instead of depending entirely on encouragement from others. Confidence becomes stable because it is built gradually through experience and reflection. True self-worth develops through consistent awareness of your values and actions. Each time you act with honesty, confidence grows naturally. Each time you remain patient during difficulty, stability grows gradually. Each time you learn from mistakes, understanding becomes deeper. Buddhist teachings remind us that identity itself is constantly changing. Skills improve, knowledge expands, perspectives evolve. When identity is seen as a process instead of a fixed image, pressure to maintain approval decreases. Learning becomes more important than appearing perfect. When validation is no longer the center of decision-making, courage increases. You become willing to try new paths, even if success is not guaranteed. You become willing to express ideas, even if agreement is not immediate. You become willing to grow, even when growth feels uncomfortable. Inner strength increases because confidence is no longer fragile. Confidence based on approval can disappear quickly when approval changes. But confidence based on awareness develops gradually and remains stable even during uncertainty. You begin to realize that not everyone needs to understand your path. Not everyone needs to agree with your choices. Not everyone needs to approve your decisions. What matters most is whether your actions align with your understanding and values. Peace grows when you accept that approval is temporary, but self-awareness can be continuous. Approval may come and go, but awareness can guide you steadily. Awareness allows you to adjust your actions without losing confidence. Awareness allows improvement without losing stability. Freedom begins when the need for constant validation ends. You begin to live more authentically because your actions are guided by understanding instead of expectation. You begin to speak more honestly because your expression is guided by clarity instead of fear. You begin to grow more naturally because your learning is guided by curiosity instead of pressure. When you stop seeking validation, you discover a quiet confidence that does not depend on constant reassurance. This confidence does not need frequent confirmation. It develops slowly through consistent awareness and thoughtful action. Inner peace becomes more stable because emotional balance is no longer dependent on changing opinions. Confidence becomes more natural because it is supported by understanding. Direction becomes clearer because decisions are guided by values. When approval is no longer necessary for self-worth, emotional independence becomes possible, and emotional independence allows the mind to remain steady even when circumstances change. A mind that does not depend on constant validation becomes more focused, more peaceful, and more resilient. And when resilience grows, progress becomes steady and meaningful. True confidence does not ask for permission to exist. 4. Detachment creates emotional freedom. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many people believe that detachment means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. They assume that if they practice detachment, they will lose love, connection, or emotional depth. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. Detachment means you stop clinging. Clinging is the habit of holding on too tightly to people, outcomes, expectations, and situations. When the mind becomes attached, it begins to demand certainty in an uncertain world. It begins to expect permanence in a temporary reality. It begins to assume that things should always remain exactly the way we want them to be. But life does not follow fixed expectations. Everything changes. Situations change. Feelings change. People change. Even our own thoughts change from moment to moment. Suffering often begins when the mind resists this natural flow of change. The stronger the attachment, the stronger the fear of losing what is attached to. Fear creates anxiety. Anxiety creates tension. Tension creates emotional exhaustion. Many people feel tired, not because they are doing too much physically, but because their mind is constantly trying to hold on to things that cannot remain the same forever. Detachment creates space between your peace and the changing nature of life. It allows you to care without becoming controlled. It allows you to love without becoming dependent. It allows you to participate in life without becoming overwhelmed by it. Detachment brings balance. It helps the mind remain stable even when circumstances are uncertain. When attachment becomes strong, emotions become unstable. A small change in someone's behavior can create worry. A small delay can create frustration. A small misunderstanding can create overthinking. The mind begins to imagine negative possibilities because it fears losing what it is attached to. This constant tension reduces clarity and increases stress. Buddhism teaches that everything in life is temporary. This understanding is not meant to create sadness, it is meant to create awareness. When you truly understand that everything changes, you begin to appreciate things more deeply without trying to control them. Appreciation replaces fear. Presence replaces anxiety. Awareness replaces resistance. Detachment allows you to enjoy moments without needing them to last forever. You begin to experience life more fully because you are not constantly worried about protecting every situation from change. You become more present because you are not constantly thinking about how to secure permanence. Many emotional struggles come from expectations. The mind creates an image of how things should be. When reality does not match this image, disappointment appears. Expectations themselves are not harmful, but strong attachment to expectations creates pressure. It creates the belief that peace can only exist if everything happens according to plan. Detachment reduces this pressure. It allows flexibility. It allows adaptation. It allows acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up effort. Acceptance means understanding that effort and outcome are not always equal. You can act sincerely and still experience unexpected results. You can try your best and still face challenges. Detachment allows you to continue moving forward without losing emotional balance. Emotional freedom develops when peace is no longer dependent on controlling outcomes. When your peace depends on everything going perfectly, your mind becomes fragile. But when your peace is supported by understanding, your mind becomes stable even when situations are imperfect. Detachment also improves relationships. When attachment becomes excessive, relationships often carry hidden pressure. Expectations become heavy. Small changes become large concerns. Communication becomes influenced by fear of loss. But when detachment is present, relationships become healthier. Care exists without control. Support exists without dependence. Understanding exists without constant pressure. A detached mind does not demand constant reassurance. It does not require continuous proof of loyalty or affection. It allows space for natural growth and change. This space allows relationships to breathe. It allows connection to develop naturally instead of being forced. Detachment helps you accept that not everything is meant to stay forever. Some people enter life to teach lessons. Some situations exist to create growth. Some experiences exist to develop wisdom. When you accept the temporary nature of experiences, endings become easier to understand. Change becomes easier to accept. Many people resist change because they believe change removes stability. But Buddhism teaches that true stability comes from understanding change. When you expect change, you are not surprised by it. When you accept change, you are not broken by it. When you prepare the mind for change, adaptation becomes easier. Detachment does not remove love. It purifies love. Attachment often mixes love with fear. Fear of losing attention, fear of losing connection, fear of losing importance. But detached love exists without fear. It allows care without creating pressure. It allows connection without creating control. When love is detached, It becomes more peaceful. It becomes less demanding. It becomes more understanding. It accepts imperfections. It accepts differences. It accepts growth. Detached love respects individuality while maintaining connection. Detachment also protects your identity. When the mind becomes too attached to roles, labels, or expectations, identity becomes rigid. You begin to define yourself only through specific outcomes. If those outcomes change, identity feels threatened. But when detachment exists, identity becomes flexible. You understand that growth requires change. Failure becomes easier to accept when identity is not strongly attached to success. Criticism becomes easier to understand when identity is not dependent on approval. Mistakes become easier to correct when identity is not dependent on appearing perfect. Detachment encourages learning because it reduces fear of being wrong. When being wrong does not threaten identity, curiosity increases. Questions become easier to ask. New perspectives become easier to consider. Growth becomes easier to pursue. The mind becomes calmer when it is not constantly trying to hold on to everything. Letting go creates mental space. This space allows creativity, understanding, and clarity to grow. Thoughts become more organized, decisions become more thoughtful, emotions become more balanced. Detachment also helps you recognize what truly matters. When everything feels equally important, the mind becomes overwhelmed. But when attachment decreases, priorities become clearer. You begin to invest energy in meaningful actions instead of reacting to every small disturbance. Life becomes simpler when unnecessary attachments decrease. Simplicity reduces stress. Simplicity increases clarity. Simplicity allows focus on what contributes to long-term well-being instead of short-term emotional satisfaction. Buddhism teaches that attachment often creates the illusion of control. The mind believes that holding tightly will prevent change, but control over external events is always limited. Trying to control everything creates frustration. Accepting limited control creates peace. When attachment decreases, gratitude increases. You begin to appreciate experiences without demanding permanence. You begin to value moments without fearing their end. Gratitude creates positive emotional energy. This energy supports resilience and optimism. Detachment strengthens resilience because it reduces emotional shock when change occurs. If the mind expects permanence, change feels like loss. But if the mind understands change, change feels natural. Resilience grows when expectations become flexible. Emotional freedom is not created by avoiding life. Emotional freedom is created by understanding life. Understanding that everything changes allows participation without fear. Participation without fear allows experience without suffering. Detachment does not remove meaning from life. It allows meaning to exist without pressure. It allows goals to exist without anxiety. It allows relationships to exist without fear. A detached mind still cares, still tries, still participates, but does not lose peace when results differ from expectations. This balance creates emotional maturity. Emotional maturity creates stability. Stability creates confidence. When detachment becomes natural, the mind becomes lighter. There is less worry about losing what cannot be controlled. There is less pressure to protect every expectation. There is less fear about uncertain outcomes. This lightness allows more presence. Presence allows deeper experience. Experience allows greater understanding. Buddhism teaches that freedom comes not from controlling the world, but from understanding the world. Understanding change allows acceptance. Acceptance allows peace. Peace allows clear action. Detachment gives you the strength to continue moving forward, even when situations change. It gives you the flexibility to adapt without losing direction. It gives you the awareness to appreciate without clinging. Emotional freedom grows when attachment weakens. Emotional freedom allows stability during uncertainty. Emotional freedom allows peace during difficulty. When the mind learns to hold lightly instead of tightly, suffering decreases. Peace increases. Balance becomes possible. Detachment does not remove connection. It removes fear. And when fear decreases, the mind becomes free. 5. Discipline builds inner power. Many people wait for motivation before taking action. They believe they will begin improving their life when they feel inspired, when they feel energetic, or when circumstances feel perfect. But motivation is temporary. Some days, motivation feels strong, and other days it disappears completely. If progress depends only on motivation, consistency becomes impossible. Buddhism teaches that real transformation does not depend on temporary feelings. Real transformation depends on discipline. Discipline is the ability to continue doing what is meaningful, even when the mind resists. It is the ability to act according to understanding, instead of acting according to mood. Discipline creates stability because it is not controlled by emotional ups and downs. It allows progress to continue even during difficult days, uncertain moments, and periods of low motivation. Inner power is not built through occasional effort. Inner power is built through repeated, consistent action. Every time you choose patience instead of anger, you strengthen emotional control. Every time you choose focus instead of distraction, you strengthen mental clarity. Every time you choose growth instead of comfort, you strengthen resilience. Discipline slowly shapes the mind into something more stable, more reliable, and more confident. Many people underestimate the quiet influence of small actions. They believe change requires dramatic effort or extreme circumstances. But Buddhism emphasizes gradual progress. Just as a small drop of water falling repeatedly can shape stone over time, small, consistent actions shape character over time. Discipline does not require perfection. Discipline requires repetition. One of the reasons discipline feels difficult is because the mind naturally prefers comfort. Comfort feels safe. Comfort feels easy. Comfort does not require effort. But comfort alone does not create growth. Growth requires stepping beyond habitual patterns. It requires choosing long-term benefit over short-term ease. Discipline helps you develop trust in yourself. Each time you follow through on a commitment, your confidence increases. Each time you act despite resistance, your belief in your ability strengthens. Over time, this self-trust becomes a powerful source of stability. You no longer depend entirely on external encouragement because you know from experience that you can rely on your own effort. Buddhism teaches awareness of habits because habits influence daily life more than occasional decisions. Small, repeated behaviors become patterns, and patterns shape outcomes. When discipline guides habits, habits begin supporting growth instead of limiting it. Healthy patterns gradually replace unhelpful patterns. Progress becomes more natural because supportive habits reduce internal resistance. Discipline also strengthens emotional balance. When the mind learns to pause instead of react, emotional intensity becomes easier to manage. Discipline allows you to choose thoughtful responses even when emotions feel strong. Instead of being controlled by immediate feelings, you begin acting according to deeper understanding. Inner power develops when actions align with values. If your values include patience, discipline helps you practice patience regularly. If your values include honesty, discipline helps you speak truthfully, even when it feels uncomfortable. When behavior reflects values consistently, identity becomes more stable. Stability creates confidence because there is less internal conflict between intention and action. Many people struggle with self-doubt because their actions do not always reflect their intentions. They want progress but avoid effort. They want change but avoid discomfort. This creates internal tension. Discipline reduces this tension by bringing intention and action closer together. When actions reflect understanding, the mind feels more integrated and peaceful. Discipline also reduces unnecessary decision fatigue. When helpful habits become routine, less mental effort is required to maintain them. For example, when mindfulness becomes a daily practice, awareness becomes more accessible. When patience becomes habitual, emotional reactions become less intense. Consistent effort gradually simplifies improvement. One important aspect of discipline is patience with gradual results. Immediate results are not always visible. Growth often happens quietly beneath the surface. Just as roots grow before a tree becomes visible above the ground, internal development occurs before external changes become obvious. Discipline allows effort to continue even when progress is not immediately noticeable. Buddhist teachings often emphasize the importance of right effort. Right effort means applying energy in ways that reduce suffering and increase understanding. Discipline guided by awareness prevents wasted effort. It encourages focusing energy on actions that contribute to long-term well-being rather than short-term distraction. Discipline does not mean forcing yourself harshly. Discipline guided by wisdom includes balance. Too much pressure creates exhaustion. Too little effort creates stagnation. Balanced discipline allows steady progress without overwhelming the mind. It includes rest, reflection, and adjustment when necessary. Another benefit of discipline is increased clarity of direction. When actions are consistent, patterns become easier to observe. You begin to understand what supports progress and what creates obstacles. This understanding allows more effective adjustment of effort. Without consistency, it becomes difficult to recognize which actions truly help. Discipline strengthens resilience because it develops the ability to continue despite challenges. Difficult situations become opportunities to practice patience and stability. Instead of being discouraged by difficulty, discipline encourages persistence. Persistence gradually reduces fear of obstacles because obstacles become part of the learning process. When discipline becomes part of daily life, emotional reactions become less extreme. The mind becomes familiar with effort, adjustment, and improvement. Mistakes become information instead of evidence of failure. Learning becomes continuous instead of occasional. Progress becomes steady instead of unpredictable. Buddhism teaches that mastery of the mind requires repeated observation. Each moment of awareness strengthens the ability to remain present. Each moment of patience strengthens emotional stability. Each moment of intentional action strengthens confidence. Discipline creates repeated opportunities to practice awareness. Inner power grows when you realize that progress depends more on consistency than intensity. Occasional extreme effort often leads to exhaustion. Moderate but consistent effort leads to sustainable development. Discipline encourages continuity. Continuity creates cumulative improvement. Many people believe discipline restricts freedom, but in reality, discipline increases freedom. When habits support clarity and stability, the mind becomes less controlled by impulsive desires. You gain freedom from distractions that reduce focus. You gain freedom from emotional reactions that create regret. You gain freedom from patterns that limit growth. Discipline also supports long-term peace. When actions are guided by awareness, fewer situations create unnecessary complications. Thoughtful decisions reduce avoidable problems. Careful communication reduces misunderstandings. Consistent reflection reduces repeated mistakes. Over time, discipline simplifies life. Clarity increases because priorities become more defined. Confidence increases because self-trust becomes stronger. Emotional stability increases because reactions become more thoughtful. Inner power does not require external recognition. It develops quietly through repeated effort and reflection. Others may not immediately notice your progress, but you feel the change internally. The mind becomes calmer, reactions become slower, decisions become clearer. Discipline strengthens independence because it reduces reliance on external pressure. You no longer need constant reminders to act according to your values. You no longer need constant encouragement to continue improving. Motivation becomes supported by habit. Habit becomes supported by awareness. Buddhism reminds us that transformation is a gradual process. Sudden change is rare, but continuous change is always possible. Each small, disciplined action contributes to long-term development. Each moment of awareness contributes to understanding. When discipline becomes natural, effort feels less forced. Actions align with intention more easily. Growth becomes part of daily life instead of a separate activity. Improvement becomes integrated into ordinary moments. Inner power develops when the mind becomes reliable. Reliability creates trust. Trust creates confidence. Confidence creates stability. Stability supports peace. Discipline also allows you to continue acting with integrity even when circumstances are uncertain. External situations may change, but disciplined awareness provides continuity. This continuity prevents confusion during difficulty. When discipline guides behavior, you do not depend entirely on emotional state to determine your actions. Even when motivation decreases, progress continues. Even when distractions appear, focus returns more easily. Even when obstacles arise, patience supports persistence. Discipline creates a sense of quiet dignity. You know that your actions are guided by understanding. You know that your effort reflects your values. This awareness creates calm confidence that does not depend on constant recognition. Buddhist teachings emphasize that effort itself is meaningful. Growth occurs during the process, not only at the result. Discipline allows appreciation of the process. Each step becomes valuable because each step contributes to development. Inner power becomes visible through stability, patience, and thoughtful action. This power does not need to announce itself. It becomes noticeable through consistency. Others begin to recognize reliability, clarity, and calm confidence. Discipline helps transform potential into progress. Many people have intentions to improve, but intentions without action remain unrealized. Discipline converts intention into movement. Movement creates experience. Experience creates understanding. Understanding strengthens future decisions because knowledge becomes practical rather than theoretical. Discipline creates the opportunity to learn through experience repeatedly. When discipline becomes part of life, improvement becomes continuous. Continuous improvement reduces regret because effort is ongoing. Even when mistakes occur, learning continues. Even when challenges appear, adjustment continues. Inner power grows stronger when effort remains steady. Steady effort creates steady progress. Steady progress creates steady confidence. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes what it practices repeatedly. If the mind practices distraction, distraction increases. If the mind practices patience, patience increases. If the mind practices awareness, awareness increases. Discipline creates repeated practice of helpful qualities. Over time, these qualities become natural tendencies rather than forced behaviors. When discipline supports your daily actions, growth becomes stable. Stability supports peace. Peace supports clarity. And clarity allows your actions to become more meaningful, more intentional, and more aligned with the life you wish to create. 6. Master your mind. The greatest challenge a person faces is not always outside circumstances, but the activity within the mind. Thoughts appear constantly. Some thoughts are helpful, while others create fear, doubt, confusion, or unnecessary worry. Many people believe that suffering comes only from situations, but Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins from the way the mind interprets situations. The mind has great power. It can create peace, but it can also create tension. It can create clarity, but it can also create confusion. When the mind is not understood, it becomes easy to believe every thought that appears. Thoughts can repeat again and again, creating emotional pressure even when no real danger exists. One of the most important teachings in Buddhism is learning to observe the mind instead of becoming controlled by it. Thoughts are not always facts. Thoughts are often reactions based on past experiences, fears, habits, or imagination. When a thought appears, the mind often immediately accepts it as truth. This automatic acceptance can create unnecessary emotional pain. For example, one small difficulty may create many negative thoughts. The mind may begin imagining future problems that have not happened. It may remember past experiences and assume the same result will happen again. It may create doubt about ability or confidence. When these thoughts are believed without awareness, anxiety increases, even when the present moment is manageable. Mastering the mind does not mean stopping thoughts completely. Thoughts naturally appear and disappear. Mastering the mind means recognizing that you are not every thought that appears. You are the observer of thoughts. This understanding creates distance between awareness and mental activity. When you observe thoughts calmly, their intensity often decreases. Instead of immediately reacting, you begin noticing patterns. Some thoughts repeat frequently. Some thoughts create similar emotional reactions again and again. Observing these patterns helps you understand how the mind operates. Buddhism teaches that many thoughts are conditioned by past experiences. The mind remembers previous situations and tries to protect you from possible difficulty. While protection can be helpful, the mind sometimes overestimates danger. It may create fear even when no immediate threat exists. Learning to recognize this tendency allows you to respond with greater balance. When the mind is not trained, it easily becomes distracted. It moves constantly between past memories and future possibilities. Regret about the past creates sadness. Worry about the future creates anxiety. But peace exists in the present moment. Training the mind to remain present reduces unnecessary suffering. Awareness of the present moment helps you see situations more clearly. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding thoughtfully. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by imagined outcomes, you begin focusing on what can be done now. Meditative practices in Buddhism are designed to strengthen this awareness. Observing the breath, observing sensations, and observing thoughts help develop familiarity with the mind's activity. Over time, the mind becomes less reactive because awareness becomes stronger. Mastering the mind also involves understanding emotions. Emotions often arise quickly, sometimes before conscious thought. Anger, fear, sadness, or frustration may appear suddenly. Without awareness, emotions may guide behavior immediately. But when awareness is present, emotions can be noticed without immediate reaction. Recognizing an emotion does not require suppressing it. Suppression often increases tension. Instead, observing emotion allows it to pass naturally. Emotions change continuously. No emotion remains permanently. Understanding this impermanent nature helps prevent emotional overwhelm. The mind sometimes creates strong identification with temporary experiences. A single mistake may create the thought, "I always fail." A small rejection may create the thought, "I am not good enough." These conclusions are often exaggerated interpretations rather than accurate reflections of reality. When the mind becomes familiar with observing thoughts, exaggerated conclusions become easier to recognize. You begin to see that thoughts are influenced by momentary emotional states. This understanding allows more balanced interpretation. Another challenge of the mind is overthinking. Overthinking creates repeated analysis without resolution. The mind revisits the same situation many times, searching for certainty. But complete certainty is rarely possible. Excessive thinking often increases confusion instead of clarity. Mastering the mind includes learning when thinking is helpful and when thinking becomes excessive. Thoughtful reflection can create understanding, but repeated rumination can create tension. Awareness allows you to recognize when thinking becomes unproductive. The mind also creates attachment to certain identities. It may create beliefs such as, "I must always succeed," or "I must always be accepted." These rigid beliefs create pressure. When reality differs from these beliefs, disappointment appears. Understanding that identity evolves allows flexibility. You are not limited to fixed definitions. Growth naturally changes abilities, perspectives, and understanding. Accepting change within yourself reduces internal pressure. Mastering the mind involves developing patience with yourself. Patterns of thinking develop over many years. Immediate change is unlikely. Gradual change is realistic. Each moment of awareness creates small improvement. Repeated awareness creates noticeable transformation. When awareness becomes stronger, emotional reactions often become less intense. Instead of immediate response, there is a brief pause. This pause allows choice. Choice allows intentional action instead of impulsive reaction. Buddhism emphasizes compassion not only toward others but also toward oneself. Harsh self-criticism often increases mental suffering. Recognizing mistakes with understanding instead of harsh judgment allows learning without unnecessary guilt. The mind often remembers negative experiences more strongly than positive experiences. This tendency can create imbalance in perception. Intentionally noticing moments of calm, understanding, and gratitude helps balance this tendency. Mastering the mind also involves understanding that control is limited. Some thoughts appear unexpectedly, some emotions arise without warning. Complete control is not always possible, but response is possible. Awareness allows skillful response even when experiences are unexpected. The mind becomes more stable when it is trained to return to the present moment repeatedly. Distraction is natural, but returning attention strengthens focus. Each return strengthens mental discipline. Clarity develops gradually. As awareness increases, confusion decreases. As confusion decreases, decisions become more aligned with understanding. This alignment reduces regret because actions are more thoughtful. The mind sometimes resists change because familiar patterns feel comfortable even when they create difficulty. Awareness allows recognition of these patterns. Recognition allows gradual adjustment. Mastering the mind includes recognizing that comparison often creates dissatisfaction. Comparing constantly with others shifts attention away from personal growth. Focusing on personal progress supports stability. Patience with progress is essential. Just as physical strength develops gradually through repeated effort, mental stability develops gradually through repeated awareness. Buddhism teaches that the mind can become either a source of suffering or a source of freedom. When thoughts are believed without examination, suffering increases. When thoughts are observed with awareness, freedom becomes possible. Freedom does not mean absence of challenge. Freedom means the ability to respond without becoming overwhelmed. Freedom means maintaining clarity even when situations are uncertain. Mastering the mind also strengthens resilience. Difficult experiences do not disappear, but the way they are experienced changes. Instead of feeling completely controlled by difficulty, you begin feeling capable of navigating it. When awareness becomes consistent, emotional reactions become more balanced. When emotional balance increases, communication improves. When communication improves, relationships often become more stable. Mastery of the mind supports wise action. Wise action considers long-term effects instead of only short-term emotional satisfaction. Wise action reduces unnecessary complications. The mind becomes more peaceful when it is not constantly resisting experience. Acceptance allows observation. Observation allows understanding. Understanding allows appropriate response. Mastering the mind is not about perfection. Occasional distraction and emotional reaction are natural. What matters is returning to awareness repeatedly. Each moment of awareness strengthens mental stability. Each moment of patience strengthens emotional balance. Each moment of clarity strengthens confidence. Over time, the mind becomes less reactive and more reflective. Reflection allows learning from experience. Learning allows wiser decisions. Buddhist teachings often describe the mind as capable of great transformation. Just as a field becomes fertile when cultivated regularly, the mind becomes stable when trained regularly. When the mind becomes familiar with awareness, peace becomes more accessible. Even during difficulty, a sense of steadiness remains possible. Mastering the mind creates freedom from unnecessary suffering. Thoughts still arise, emotions still appear, situations still change, but awareness provides stability within change. Stability within change allows movement without fear. Movement without fear allows growth without resistance. Growth without resistance allows life to unfold with greater ease and clarity. When the mind becomes steady, actions become more intentional. Intentional actions create meaningful direction. Meaningful direction creates a sense of purpose that does not depend entirely on external conditions. Mastering the mind allows you to participate in life fully without becoming overwhelmed by every experience. You begin to understand that peace is not created by controlling everything outside, but by understanding what happens inside. When awareness becomes consistent, the mind becomes supportive rather than obstructive. And when the mind becomes supportive, life becomes more balanced, more thoughtful, and more peaceful. 7. True power is quiet. Many people associate power with visibility. They believe power must be displayed, announced, and proven. They think that strength must always be loud, confidence must always be expressed boldly, and influence must always be visible to others. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that true power is often quiet. True power does not always need recognition. True power does not demand attention. It exists steadily, without noise, without pressure, and without the need for constant validation. Quiet power comes from inner stability. When the mind is peaceful, there is no urgency to impress others. When understanding becomes deep, there is no need to constantly prove knowledge. When confidence becomes natural, there is no need to constantly defend identity. This calm presence itself becomes a form of strength that others can feel, even without words. People who possess quiet power often speak less but understand more. They observe carefully before forming conclusions. They listen fully before responding. They allow situations to reveal themselves instead of forcing immediate judgment. Because their mind is not rushing to react, their responses become more thoughtful and more effective. Noise often comes from insecurity. When a person feels uncertain inside, they may try to appear strong outside. They may try to convince others of their value because they are still unsure of their own worth. But when self-understanding becomes clear, the need to convince others gradually disappears. Confidence becomes calm rather than dramatic. Quiet power is not passive. It does not mean avoiding responsibility or refusing to act. Quiet power means acting with awareness instead of reacting with impulse. It means choosing responses carefully instead of speaking without reflection. It means focusing on meaningful action instead of seeking unnecessary recognition. Buddhism teaches that attachment to recognition often creates suffering. When the mind expects constant appreciation, disappointment becomes frequent. When effort is made only for praise, motivation becomes unstable. Quiet power allows effort to remain sincere because it is guided by understanding instead of expectation. When a person develops quiet power, their actions begin to speak more clearly than their words. Consistency becomes visible. Reliability becomes noticeable. Others begin to recognize stability and integrity without the person needing to announce it. Quiet power often creates influence without force. People naturally trust those who remain calm during difficulty. People feel comfortable around those who listen carefully. People respect those who respond thoughtfully. Influence grows because behavior reflects balance and understanding. Many conflicts increase because individuals feel the need to defend themselves immediately. Immediate defense often increases misunderstanding, but when a person remains calm and listens carefully, communication often becomes more productive. Quiet power reduces unnecessary conflict because reactions become more intentional. Buddhism often emphasizes the importance of right speech. Right speech involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and meaningfully. Quiet power supports right speech because it reduces the desire to speak impulsively. Words become more deliberate and more constructive. Speaking less does not mean thinking less. Often, speaking less allows thinking more deeply. Reflection becomes possible when the mind is not constantly expressing every reaction immediately. Reflection creates clarity. Clarity creates wisdom. Quiet power also protects emotional energy. Constant need to prove oneself can create exhaustion. Constant need to respond to every opinion can create distraction. Quiet power allows selective attention. Attention is directed toward meaningful growth rather than unnecessary argument. A quiet mind is able to recognize which situations deserve energy and which situations do not. This selective focus prevents emotional fatigue. Emotional fatigue often results from engaging in too many unnecessary conflicts. Quiet power preserves energy for actions that contribute to long-term well-being. People who develop quiet power often feel more independent emotionally. Their mood does not depend entirely on external praise or criticism. Their confidence does not disappear when facing disagreement. Their sense of direction remains stable even when external conditions change. Buddhism teaches that stability of mind is one of the greatest forms of strength. A stable mind does not collapse during difficulty. A stable mind does not become arrogant during success. A stable mind remains balanced in changing circumstances. Quiet power allows flexibility. Flexibility allows adaptation. Adaptation allows resilience. Resilience allows continued progress even when situations are uncertain. Quiet power also improves relationships. When communication is calm, understanding becomes easier. When reactions are thoughtful, trust becomes stronger. When presence is peaceful, connection becomes more comfortable. Many people feel pressure to always express opinions quickly. They believe silence may be misunderstood, but silence can also communicate maturity. Silence can communicate patience. Silence can communicate confidence. Not every thought needs to be expressed immediately. Some thoughts benefit from reflection. Some opinions benefit from observation. Quiet power allows time for deeper understanding. Buddhist teachings encourage mindfulness in speech and action. Mindfulness helps reduce regret. Many regrets occur when words are spoken impulsively. Quiet power allows pause before expression. This pause often prevents unnecessary conflict. Quiet power also allows humility. Humility does not reduce strength. Humility strengthens learning. When the mind is not attached to appearing correct, it becomes open to new perspectives. Openness increases understanding. Understanding increases wisdom. Wisdom improves decisions. Improved decisions create stability. A person with quiet power does not feel threatened by different opinions. They are able to listen without immediately feeling defensive. Listening allows learning. Learning allows growth. Quiet power reduces comparison. When the mind is not focused on competing constantly, attention becomes available for self-development. Growth becomes personal instead of competitive. Buddhism teaches that comparison often creates dissatisfaction. Someone will always appear more successful in some way. Quiet power allows appreciation of individual progress instead of constant measurement against others. Appreciation of progress encourages patience. Patience encourages persistence. Persistence encourages improvement. Quiet power also supports ethical action. When decisions are not driven by desire for recognition, integrity becomes easier to maintain. Actions reflect values rather than expectations. Integrity creates trust within oneself. Self-trust strengthens confidence. Confidence strengthens stability. Quiet power often becomes visible through behavior during difficulty. When challenges appear, emotional reactions often intensify. But a person with quiet power maintains composure. Composure allows thoughtful response. Thoughtful response reduces unnecessary complications. Calm behavior during difficulty inspires confidence in others. People feel reassured when someone remains steady. Stability becomes a source of support for those around them. Quiet power allows leadership without force. Leadership guided by calmness encourages cooperation. Cooperation often produces more sustainable results than pressure. Buddhism teaches that intention influences action. Quiet power supports clear intention. Clear intention guides meaningful effort. Meaningful effort produces meaningful progress. Progress increases confidence. Confidence reinforces calm presence. Quiet power also allows appreciation of simplicity. Constant pursuit of attention often creates complexity. Simplicity reduces mental burden. Reduced burden increases clarity. Clarity improves decision-making. Improved decision-making reduces regret. Quiet power encourages mindful living. Mindful living increases awareness of thoughts, actions, and consequences. Awareness supports responsible choices. Responsible choices create stability. Stability supports peace. Peace allows deeper understanding of experience. Understanding reduces confusion. Reduced confusion decreases unnecessary suffering. Quiet power also helps manage uncertainty. Uncertainty is unavoidable in life. Trying to eliminate uncertainty completely creates frustration. Quiet power allows acceptance of uncertainty while continuing thoughtful action. Acceptance reduces resistance. Reduced resistance conserves energy. Conserved energy can be used for constructive effort. Constructive effort supports growth. Growth increases resilience. Resilience allows recovery from difficulty more quickly. Quiet power encourages balanced perspective. Balanced perspective prevents exaggeration of temporary problems. Temporary problems become manageable when seen clearly. Seeing clearly reduces emotional intensity. Reduced intensity allows wiser decisions. Wiser decisions create beneficial outcomes. Quiet power supports long-term vision. Immediate recognition becomes less important than meaningful progress. Meaningful progress creates lasting satisfaction. Lasting satisfaction reduces constant craving for approval. Reduced craving increases contentment. Contentment supports emotional stability. Emotional stability strengthens mental clarity. Mental clarity improves communication. Improved communication strengthens relationships. Strong relationships support well-being. Well-being increases capacity for compassionate action. Compassion strengthens connection. Connection increases understanding. Understanding reduces conflict. Reduced conflict supports peace. Peace allows continued development of awareness. Awareness strengthens quiet power further. Quiet power is not built quickly. It develops gradually through repeated practice of patience, observation, and thoughtful action. Each moment of calm response strengthens stability. Each moment of mindful speech strengthens wisdom. Each moment of balanced perspective strengthens resilience. Buddhist teachings often remind us that true strength does not depend on external appearance. True strength depends on internal understanding. Internal understanding reduces fear. Reduced fear allows more authentic action. Authentic action creates meaningful direction. Meaningful direction supports purposeful living. Purposeful living increases satisfaction. Satisfaction reduces restless seeking. Reduced restlessness increases calmness. Calmness strengthens quiet power. Quiet power does not seek recognition, but recognition often arrives naturally. People tend to respect those who remain stable under pressure. People tend to trust those who communicate thoughtfully. People tend to value those who act with integrity. These qualities develop through quiet power. True power does not need to dominate. True power does not need to control. True power does not need to appear impressive constantly. True power remains steady, aware, and intentional. A quiet person may not speak often, but when they speak, their words carry weight. A calm person may not react quickly, but when they act, their actions create impact. A balanced person may not seek attention, but their presence influences environment. Quiet power allows movement through life with dignity. Dignity supports self-respect. Self-respect supports confidence. Confidence supports clarity. Clarity supports meaningful action. Meaningful action supports growth. Growth supports fulfillment. Fulfillment reduces unnecessary craving. Reduced craving supports peace. Peace strengthens quiet power even further. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes shaped by repeated practice. If the mind practices patience, patience becomes natural. If the mind practices awareness, awareness becomes natural. If the mind practices calmness, calmness becomes natural. If the mind practices humility, humility becomes natural. Over time, these qualities integrate into character. Character influences behavior. Behavior influences experience. Experience influences understanding. Understanding influences future behavior. This continuous cycle allows gradual development of quiet power. Quiet power does not need dramatic expression. Quiet power does not need frequent acknowledgement. Quiet power exists steadily within consistent awareness. When the mind becomes peaceful, actions become meaningful. When actions become meaningful, life becomes balanced. When life becomes balanced, progress becomes sustainable. Sustainable progress supports long-term well-being. Long-term well-being creates deeper contentment. Contentment reduces emotional turbulence. Reduced turbulence supports clarity. Clarity strengthens quiet power continuously. True power remains calm, even when situations are intense. True power remains patient, even when results take time. True power remains thoughtful, even when opinions differ. True power remains steady, even when circumstances change. True power remains quiet, yet deeply effective. Quiet power is not the absence of strength. Quiet power is refined strength. Quiet power is stable strength. Quiet power is enduring strength. And enduring strength allows a person to move forward with clarity, confidence, and peace, regardless of changing conditions. True power is quiet because it does not need to prove itself. Silence is not emptiness, it is clarity. Calmness is not weakness, it is control. Detachment is not loss, it is freedom. When you learn to protect your energy, your mind becomes lighter. When you learn to control your reactions, your strength becomes deeper. When you stop depending on approval, your confidence becomes stable. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that true power is not found in noise, but in awareness. Not in proving yourself to the world, but in understanding yourself deeply. A silent mind sees clearly. A calm heart decides wisely. A disciplined life moves steadily forward. When you master your mind, you stop being controlled by fear, doubt, and pressure. When your peace does not depend on external situations, your stability becomes unshakable. True strength does not need to be loud. True strength remains steady in every situation. True strength continues moving forward, quietly and consistently. So choose silence when the world becomes noisy. Choose calmness when situations become difficult. Choose awareness when emotions try to control you. Because a peaceful mind is powerful, a balanced heart is resilient, and a person who remains calm, focused, and aware becomes truly unstoppable.